Hey guys, Randy here, and today we're going to talk about this camera right here, the Sony FX30. So I think I should start out by saying that this video is not going to be a very spec heavy or very technical video. It's not kind of my ball of wax. There's a lot of videos out there that you can watch on this camera that a lot of other people have done that are more into that. If you want to go find the very detailed, very tech savvy kind of review, go check out Gerald and Dunn and people like that, because they really get into those kind of specs. I'm going to come at this more from the standpoint of just an everyday user and just my general thoughts on the camera. There'll be some specific ups and downs, but for the most part, just a very kind of surface level why I think the camera's good, why I think the camera has its certain failings, but my overall feelings on using the camera. That's kind of the direction that I'm going to take this. Now, to be honest, all transparency, I had my mindset on the FX3. That camera at this point has been around for about 2 years, a little over 2 years, I believe, somewhere in there. But that camera is just under $4,000. And I was like, it's going to be a while before I can afford that. About the time that I was researching this FX30 came on the scene. I was like, okay, it's almost the same camera. It's the APS-C version of it, essentially. And having come from the A6500, I was used to shooting on APS-C. Most of my lenses were for that ecosystem. And so when I saw that, and for, they're right around the $2,000 price point, I was like, this camera definitely, I think, answers or solves that riddle of what can I afford and how soon I can get my hands on it. And so it just kind of worked out really good, and good timing that I could get myself into that camera. Now, one of the things I think I will do is go over a few of the things that I have added to this system to rig it out a little bit, as it were. I won't go too detailed on it, and what I'll do is I'll put some of the links in the description, so if you want to look at any of these things, you can afterwards, and click on each individual thing. So I think I'm going to start top down and work with the handle first. And what I did on here was I added the small rig handle extension. That's one of the things that a lot of people have found that was a shortcoming on the FX3 and the FX30, because it's the same exact handle, and that was that the handle's too short. It's just not long enough to get your hands underneath of it without this extension. And thank God Small Rig came around and they created this thing for it. On top of that, I have a small rig, again, V-mount plate. Now, this is kind of an unusual looking one. It's very, very minimal. I had a bigger one, but I found that it got to be kind of heavy. And so I found this little Small Rig V-mount plate that's very small, very lightweight. And it's nice because I can take and put my V-mount battery right there on top. Why I did that was because I didn't want to always have a rail system because typically you would take a V-mount battery and you would have a rail system, and you put the V-mount either behind or whatever on the camera. And I wanted to be able to have times where I ran as minimal as possible. This allows me to do it. And on that note, what I'm using is the Cine V50 V-mount battery. Not the most glorious battery out there. It's pretty cheap. I think I paid under $100 for it. Obviously, a V50 is not going to last as long as a 98 watt-hour battery or that kind of thing. But I chose it because it's really lightweight. It's not very big, and so for those very minimal setups, but I can still power my monitor with it, it's perfect. Again, not the highest end battery out there. I realize that, but that's okay. It suits my needs. The other thing that I did was I added a little extension back here. This is a cold shoe adapter, and I can't remember who makes it, but again, I'll put the link in the description. The reason I did that was because I wanted to add this small rig monitor mount for the back. And I don't shoot with the monitor up here like a lot of people do. I shoot with it down below, and there's reasons for that, because I like to hold the camera from the back, from the double handle from the sides, and then I can put the monitor behind it and kind of keep it well balanced for tracking. So I like to put my monitor down below in the back. And then the other thing I did was on the body itself, is I added a small rig. It's basically kind of a half cage or a 3/4 cage. It doesn't go over the top. I kind of wish it did, but with this camera and having the built-in, kind of the built-in cage system they have with all the mounts, it doesn't really allow, in most cases, to have a full cage on it and have the handle on it, and I wanted to have both. There is one out there, but I discovered it after I bought this one. So maybe down the road I'll buy that one that has a full cage. But that's pretty much the hardware end of it. I do use, as far as connectivity goes, I am using the Condor Blue D-Tap dummy battery. I'm using thin HDMI cable made by, I'm not sure how you say it, it's spelled E-L-V-I-D, Elvid, I'm not sure how you say that. But I have that, and I have a Sony microphone. Okay, so here's a part of the video where most people talk about the things they love about the camera, and then they talk about the things they don't like about the camera, and then they sum it up at the end. Yeah, I'm weird, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to talk about the things that I don't like about the camera first, and then I will kind of wrap up the things that I do like about the camera. It's always good to end on a good note, I think. So most of the things that I don't like about the camera are going to pretty much center around the profile aspect of it and some of the noise. Now, the first thing that I don't like about this camera is it doesn't have SLOG2. Oh, I just really irked a lot of people in the comments section, I am sure. Because why would you get this camera and want SLOG2? Okay. Remember when I said I had the 6500? That camera is an 8-bit camera, and SLOG3 is horrible in 8-bit. And I still plan to use my 6500 as a B camera. And I spent a lot of time creating a very custom profile in SLOG2 that I was very happy with. And it'd be nice to be able to match that. When I got the FX30, no S-Log2. Why, Sony? Why? Now, I understand that this camera was marketed and people are really getting on board with the S-Log3 aspect of the camera. The Cine EI, the dual base ISO, that's the whole selling point of this camera. I get it. But not having that there doesn't make sense to me. You have all the other profiles that have been in Sony forever, but you don't have S-Log2? Okay, it ain't hard. So that's one of my gripes. My second gripe is, and I've seen a lot of people say that this is not true, or they've made fun of people who have brought up this very point, and that's how noisy it is in S-Log3 in the lower light situations. It is. Now, I realize some people would say, well, you need to expose properly, you need to have the right lenses, you need to have, well, you just use the right lights. First of all, not all of us are making a movie all the time. If you're making a movie, that's great, because you're going to have control of your environment, you're going to set up lights, you're going to have the right lenses for everything, you're going to have all that. But if you're shooting a wedding or a seminar or something like that, you don't necessarily have control of the lighting. And like in my case, the only zoom lens I have is a Sony 18-105. It's an f4 lens. So you can imagine in low light that does not do well. And in run and gun situations, you need a zoom lens. Now I know I need to get a better lens at some point, but I'm not there yet. So S-Log3, not a good fit in those situations. So what I've done is I've actually created a custom CINE4 profile, because with CINE4, you don't have to push your ISO as high. And as you'll see right here, you can see the difference between a CINE4 and S-Log3 in the same exact situation with the same exact lens. So that's kind of my first gripe. But again, it's understandable that it's an APS-C sensor, Super 35, not going to perform as well as a full frame, sister or brother camera. And with that, what that means too is that I don't shoot inside of the Cine EI environment, because when you have Cine EI activated, your S-Log is not customizable. You have to shoot default S-Log. And I'm sure there's reasons for that. They think it's optimized or whatever reason that might be. That's fine. But it keeps me out of that environment because I have very specific settings that I will do in SLOG3. And going back to my Cine4 solution with the low light, what I have done is I have taken and made a very custom Cine4 where I've raised the blacks and certain detailed levels and those kind of things. And I'm using the SLOG3 color profile with inside of the Cine4. That helps me to match my Cine4 stuff with my S-Log stuff. And it, you know, what I will do is I will put those exact specs in the description as well. That way, if you guys want to play with it, you can. But that's just the way I shoot, and I realize that that's not for everybody, and some people might go, well, you're an amateur, whatever. That's just the way that I do things. It solves some of my problems that I had. So for the most part, that's the things I don't like about this camera. I would say that's the big things. Everything else is nitpicky kind of stuff that I'm not even going to bother getting into for this video. So what are the things I like about this camera? One of the things I really love about this camera, and this isn't new because I had this in my 6500, and that's in-body stabilization. Sony's had that for a while, but I love it because I have cinema lenses that are not stabilized, and that makes a huge difference. And considering the fact that this camera is listed as a cinema camera, granted a lower end, kind of an entry-level cinema camera, you don't see stabilization on cinema cameras, not usually. But on the FX3 and the FX30, Sony included it. And that's huge because having non-stabilized lenses, which I have a few of, being able to hold this camera in your hand with hardly any rigging so you're not weighing it down and not having that handshake, that is huge. So from going forward, I don't think I'll ever get a camera without in-body stabilization because it really improves your shooting experience on set. Number two, I really love the fact that this camera has a little zoom rocker on it. As mentioned before, I do have the Sony 18-0105, and this is a motorized zoom lens. And being able to control that on the body, like a regular video camera, is really, really handy, again, in run and gun situations. I shoot sports events, I shoot things like that that are very on the fly kind of shooting, and to be able to treat the camera like a typical video camera, that is really handy as well. And then with that zoom function, this is something I didn't even know the camera had until after I shot my first wedding with it, as a matter of fact. It has clear image zoom. Now, clear image zoom has been around a while with Sony. I was first familiarized with that technology on the Sony EA50. That's like an 8-year-old or 9-year-old camera, something like that. And it had limitations back then, but the clear image zoom on this camera is incredible. And if you don't know anything about that, basically it has an algorithm that kind of fills in the gaps as it's zooming in. So you can have a prime lens zoom in and still have incredible quality out of it. I'm a pixel peeper, and I have not had any issues with the images that I've taken in clear image zoom. So I think that wraps up the big things that I love about this camera. There's some small stuff too, but I don't want to spend too much time on all those things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you some video clips I've taken over the last month and a half, almost 2 months of having this camera, to kind of give you a glimpse as to what it can do and some of the great images it produces. I have some stuff that's shot in 64K and also 124K, and then I also included some stuff in there that is the Cinema 4 and the S-Log side-by-side comparisons. So that kind of give you an idea of what I was talking about on that front as well. So sit back and enjoy some clips from this camera. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Oh, and none of those shots were on a gimbal. Every single one of those shots was handheld. And I think that's a true testament to how well a combination of internal stabilization combined with, you know, a stabilized lens such as this, what this camera can do. So I really find that to be very impressive. Sony's come a long way with their autofocus, their stabilization, their image quality in a low-end package like this is really incredible, and I can't really complain about it, especially for the price point. So like I said, I realize this video is not really a very technical video. It's just kind of just wrapping up my experience using it so far, and hopefully it gives you a perspective on the positives of it, and maybe informs you as to whether or not it's a camera that you want to get. So until next time, take care.